All right, welcome. Thank you for joining. This is the 2025 United States Strongman Nationals Seminar, hosted by me, Steve Coyne. I am the Florida State Representative for United States Strongman. I'm really excited that you wanted to join us. Today, we're going to go over all of the techniques, training strategies, and attack plans so that you can do your best at USS Nationals this year in Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you have any questions as we're going along, please drop them in the comments. We'd be happy to get back to you to help you out with whatever you need. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. All right, so this year's USS Nationals, once again, is in Charlotte, North Carolina, hosted by United States Strongman VP John Albrecht. And we're going to kick things off right away with the yoke walk. So, when we're talking about the yoke, the things we really want to consider are your pick, how you walk, the footwork associated with that, and then the equipment you want to use with the right programming in your training plan. So when we are talking about the yoke walk, the first step is to get the right yoke height. Now, this is a balance. As we go through any of these things, you need to understand that nothing is a definite, right? You just have to find the right thing that works for you by using a certain set of fundamentals. So when we're doing the yoke height, the most common and my suggested way to place the yoke is up nice and high on this trap shelf. Okay. Now, the way we do this is by squeezing our upper back nice and tight. Think about those traps and back squeezing together. So we have a literal lip on top of them, not on your neck, but on the top of those traps to support the yoke in an upright position. This would be similar to a high bar squat setup. The other way that some people prefer to carry the yoke is in a more of a low bar, or we'll call this a back rack support. So this is a pretty good example here that you can see. I want you to take a look at, this is Brendan Walsh. He's got the rack right up high on his traps versus Wes over here. You can see that it's a little bit more on the back of his shoulders. Now, neither of these are really wrong, but just understand when we have it up high on our traps, we're going to keep our torso in a very upright position versus when it's on the backs of our shoulders or our upper back, it's resting in a position that's going to force you to have a little bit of a tilt. If you're familiar with the different types of squats, just think about it that way. A high bar squat, you have more of an upright position. A low bar back squat, you have a tilt forward. Now, when you have that tilt forward, that can be advantageous because you're going to be leaning in a way that's pushing your weight and momentum forward. However, there's a huge strain on your back to support that weight. It's going to be a strain no matter what because it's a lot of weight on a yoke carry, but there's a lot more that your back has to do to support that tilted over low bar position. Now, whichever way that we go into this, what we want to do is figure out the right hand position. This is once again two good examples of hand positions here. So Brendan has really good mobility, in general, a smaller frame. So he's able to bring his hands in narrow on the actual the crossbar of the yoke versus Wes over here, his hands are on the uprights. Now, the biggest, most important thing is that we create tension. So whether you're in nice and narrow or out wide, or even a lot of these bigger pro level strongmen, let's take a look back at the cover. Some of them will have their hands relatively low, but I want you to consider that for somebody like Luke Stoltman here, he's got a huge frame, probably not the best mobility in the entire world. So he has to bring his hands a little lower. He's not going to be able to bring his hands up nice and high. So you want to find the best combination of having your hands high enough to create a big squeeze through your back, stretch through your chest, that's going to allow you to create tension from head to toe all the way down. So I really encourage you to have your hands high instead of down low so you can keep that brace throughout the entire movement. Now, when we actually start moving the yoke, there's two ways that we can start this off. We can have what I'll call a squat start versus a sprint start. This is really just having even feet or staggered feet. Now, either way, we have to make sure that our center of gravity and the center of our mass is completely even and under the yoke crossbar. If we're going to split our feet, picture how a sprinter would jump off blocks like at the Olympics, right? They have a big stagger like this. Because this is heavy weights, we'll want a short stagger. So you can think of this as your front foot, whichever will be, about a half step forward, and your back foot a half step back. What this will allow us to do is to pick up and start walking right away. Now, this technique, the sprint start, only works really well if this is a weight that you can move pretty efficiently and quickly. If this is something that's a little heavier or closer to maximal, and we're just concerned about moving it, period, we have to really prioritize picking this thing up with stability. So you might want to have an even stance. Once again, your feet even with the center of the yoke. You can do this by seeing the uprights to the side and just drawing a line through your head, center of the uprights through the center of your feet, and then standing up, making sure you're stable, and then walking forward. What happens a lot with this sprint start is because people get moving right away, it can cause a lot of swinging back and forth immediately. So, as a success strategy, you should think about the yoke as something you need to accelerate into and build up into. If you just start right out the gate, take that first step, and you're trying to go 100%, it's going to cause a lot of swinging back and forth. What we want to do is accelerate, so at the point where we're about 15 feet into the course, then we hit our top speed, because we want this yoke to stay smooth and even, and not swinging, to allow us to have our best movement. So remember, that's very important. This is something you can watch at any competition that features a yoke. You have people that are extremely fast, very athletic, and they'll start super quick, but it starts swinging right away. The yoke can get out in front of them, can start falling back behind them, and they'll lose valuable time and energy by trying to stabilize and get back into position. This also leads to a lot of drops. So when you are doing the yoke, you are allowed 2 drops. Your first drop, you can pick up again and then start your carry. On the second one at this event, your distance measurement will be taken. So my advice to you, if you do happen to drop this, is to take your time, don't freak out, go through the fundamentals of having that tight brace head to toe through your body, pick it up with stability, and keep moving. Just remember that. It can be very easy to get caught up in a lot of nerves and jitters and the rush of a competition, but don't make that take you out of having good focus for this event. When we're actually walking and completing this course, you need to be very sure that you are not sliding across the line. The best way to ensure that you're not getting a slide penalty is to run all the way through the line. And if I were you, I would ask your judge to tell you, to scream at you with absolute clarity that you have crossed the line, so that you know you have moved this entire implement and done the work that you need to do. Very simple. Everybody should be doing this, but sometimes we forget. Now, when you are walking, we want to make sure we're walking in our normal gait, our normal foot pattern. A lot of people will start in this wide squat stance and then sort of wide duck walk it to move along. But that, look at what I'm doing here. I'm actually shifting side to side. If we bring our feet in to our normal walking pattern, then we're going to maintain a nice, solid, straight base through the entire course. So just remember, normal foot stance. There's a lot of things that go into your yoke walk, depending on where you are at with your training, your ability, and your strengths. But some general concepts that we want to make sure that we're covering is to prioritize speed. This is an event for time. The fastest person will win this event. Just remember what I said earlier about make sure that you don't start at 100 miles an hour at 100%. We want to accelerate so that at about 15 to 20 feet into our course, we then hit our top speed and carry that the whole way through. When we're actually doing this in training, leading up to it, make sure you're doing some lighter yoke runs where you can really refine and sharpen your technique and move your feet very, very quick. If all you do is very heavy yoke work, you're going to move slowly, and that will force you to only move slow when it's time that you have to bring up a lot of speed in competition. So you should be also having some element of like sprint or maybe sled push training in your program so that you're keeping those fast twitch sparks in your system. But if you're somebody where this is more of a maximal weight and just getting this done, period, is more of a concern, what we want to do is prioritize instead getting yourself under heavy weight. So we can do overloads in training, which is just adding a little bit more weight than we're either accustomed to with walking or more than is at competition. And we can just stand up in place with it to get your body used to holding heavy weight. I just want you to think about what it would feel like if you were to do a really heavy yoke hold in place with 800 pounds, but you only have to move with 600. If you were to do an 800-pound yoke hold for 10 seconds, and then the next time you come around and train yoke and it's at 600, your body is going to naturally feel more comfortable, and you'll know it'll feel so much lighter just because of those overloads. But you can also do this if you're really fast and good at this weight already. We want to find the balance between heavy weight and moving quickly. The yoke is so nervous system demanding that you should not be doing heavy yokes every week. This is not just for this event, this is a principle in general. So I would recommend 1 week heavy, either overloads or shorter distances, and then the next week light for speed. This is a system that works really, really great. Now, I have practice transitions in here. There are no transitions, but you should be practicing your setup for this event. Now, the rule for this is that you are going to be able to start under the yoke, okay? You'll get the typical athlete ready, judge ready, go command. So you should be practicing what that's going to be like at competition with the right setup and just execute. Some other training techniques that you should be implementing are possibly training longer distances and more picks, right? These are just ways to make it harder so it feels easier at competition. This is a 75-foot course at nationals. So if you were to regularly train even 85 feet or maybe 100 feet over and over again, 75 feet should feel like a lot less of a demand, right? As I said earlier, be mindful of your fatigue, and you can avoid really crashing your system by alternating weeks of heavy and light. The yoke is so demanding on the entire nervous system. People call it the yoke flu when they do really heavy yokes and then feel like they got hit by a bug. So just be very mindful that you are not constantly slamming your system. It's going to affect the rest of your training negatively. So be smart with your yoke training. The last thing I would recommend in your programming is to actually time your sets, right? You can use things like a speed gate, or if you have to, look at your phone or stopwatch, have somebody time you. You can record it and just time on the phone how long it's taking you. But you should be able to track and measure progress in different metrics. So this isn't just increasing weight. You should be able to also maybe use the same weight, but increase your speed week in, week out. By timing your sets, this is one way to ensure that what you're doing is working. But also, if you start to have a pattern where you're getting slower and slower, then you know you need to get back to doing speed work, right? So cues that are successful for the yoke, I really like your hips and your nips as headlights. When we're doing the yoke, it's very easy to shift side to side or front and back. The yoke can shift this way or it can shift up and down, but our goal is to remain in a tall posture, just like we're standing up nice and straight. If it starts to swivel over to the side, if you can have the presence and the wherewithal to bring center of your chest and your hips back in the direction that you want to go, you'll be able to pull the entire yoke with you back into that straight line. When we're carrying the yoke, we also want steady steps. This should be very rhythmic. It should just be a good normal pace, even if you're slow or if you're moving really quick, steady, boom, 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 or slow, just like a robot, step, 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 step. Think of it like a metronome used for music. We want that even cadence and then to stay in it and stay moving, right? Stay tall, stay tight. And one of my real big cues that I think a lot of people miss out on is runway vision. So, where we place our head in lifting is always very important. On the yoke, a lot of people will get in position, lift their chest, and then lift their head up, either looking straight forward or even looking up a little bit. But if we have this yoke on our trap shelf in back and we start lifting our head up, it's going to be potentially forcing this yoke to slide off of our traps. If it's right here and we look up, it's a big, thick bar on that yoke. So we can't be leaning back just a little bit with it, which is what our head posture might force to happen here. What I would recommend is what I call runway vision. Picture if you're an airplane and you're coming down for a landing, we're looking forward mostly, but about 15 to 20 degrees down. I personally look at a straight line in front of me. I can see and visualize my lane, but I'm fixed on a spot about 20 feet in front of me. So when we do that, we're going to still have all this tight brace. We're going to stay tall, and we're going to move in a nice straight line just as we're supposed to. Now, on the yoke, there's a lot of equipment we can use. The most important thing, starting from the ground up, is your footwear. You have to make sure that you are using a hard sole. Just picture if you wanted to jump as high as possible, would you rather jump on a big stack of pillows or on a hardwood surface? When we have a hard sole, we're going to get all the strength and power from our body pressed into the ground so we can have all that force and strength in the yoke carry. If we have a soft sole, something like a runner or even basketball shoes, that soft sole is going to compress and absorb our strength and just take away from our total power potential. So make sure you have something hard and solid and also flat soled so we can walk in our normal gait pattern and move with strength. I do strongly recommend belts for this. In all strongman lifts, it's very important to be tight and braced head to toe, but especially the yoke. The yoke is utilizing everything in your body to move successfully. So just to make all of those connections for tension, get those belts, hard belt and soft belt if you have it, or at least just one if you don't have both. Okay. Some people use knee wraps for the yoke, which can work as a support, but if you're going to do that, I don't encourage it, first off, but I just want to cover it. If people wrap your knees too tight, you're not going to be able to extend the leg as much as you need to. So sleeves do work really well just to give you better stability and support. Do not encourage wraps on this. Use your grip shirt. It helps. Just does, plain and simple. And then I'd really recommend to chalk up the back of that shirt. And even if you can, chalk up the bar a little bit. As a fundamental, though, I want you to understand that if we're carrying a yoke technically correct, you shouldn't have to use a grip shirt. But if things go wrong or you're just slightly out of position, that tight grip shirt is going to help you lock in and stay fixed with that weight as you move with it. It's just sort of a backup plan if something doesn't go perfectly according to plan. All right, moving into the log, clean, and press. We have our pick and lap, the clean, press or jerk, and then, of course, equipment and programming. So when we're picking this log up off the floor, foot position can vary just a little bit. Some people tend to go a little wider. Some people go a little more narrow. But the important thing is that when we're getting it to our lap, we want to make sure that we're deadlifting the log up. We don't want to row it into you. So what I would recommend is to brace in the same way that you would pull the slack out of a barbell and fix your lats and upper back on a deadlift. We want to do the same thing with the log clean and press. We want to start this lift with as much tension and brace as possible. I really like this cue of hide your armpit, which is just internally rotating through your arm into the shoulder to help engage this lat and arm connection. We'll pick up the log into our lap. We'll stand up fully like a deadlift, and then we'll come down into our lap position. Now, a very common mistake that a lot of people make on the log is that people arch over and hunch over the log. In reality, we actually want to stay pretty upright with our spine and torso. When our spine is flat, we're going to be able to get better leg and hip drive into the clean. So if we make that more efficient, we're saving energy to apply it directly into the push press, the jerk, or a viper if that's what you're going to do. On this theme of brace, squeeze these handles hard. A lot of people forget or don't connect that when we're trying to create all this tension in our body, if we're creating a nice tight fist, that sends those signals of strength all the way up through the rest of our body. So make sure you're squeezing those handles. And I also recommend don't change your hand position once it's in your lap. You'll see a lot of people come up into that deadlift, they'll drop into your lap, and then they'll re-grip. That could put you into the wrong position. It also takes away some of that brace that you should have been utilizing from the start. So squeeze those handles hard and keep squeezing the whole way through. After we do our clean, rolling up our body, we want to make sure that we're getting into a good, strong front rack. This is an excellent example of what a good front rack looks like. This lifter here is standing upright with a good stack of his shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles all in a straight line. What a lot of people tend to do is one of two things. Either one, they lean back so that they can be under the log a little bit more, or they push their hips forward, so they either lean back so they're not in this stacked position, or they don't go into complete full rack with your head up. Look at this guy's head and chin. It is completely out of the way. And when he does this and brings his chin and nose pointed up to the ceiling, we're able to stack that log over our weight. So if we do a successful dip and drive, which should be a vertical process, and then sending up, we're sending all of that weight vertically into the log, right? So really, really focus on getting this right rack position. And you can work on this by doing mobility drills, working on your thoracic extension to make sure you're in that right position. So if you have to utilize, mobility, stretches, this and that, it's definitely worth your time because you're just wasting energy if you're lifting from the wrong position. This rack position, great cue from Nick Canby, so it should be like a good front double bicep pose. So think about your arms, elbows, everything, squeezing nice and tight. That's how we should feel when we are under the log with our chin up. Always, always, always have a good, hard brace and stay tight head to toe in general and strongman. It's just going to make you stronger and also safer when you're trying to execute these movements. Through your feet, you want to make sure that your pressure is spread evenly. This is particularly true when we go to dip and then drive up. Think about your foot as a tripod between your pinky toe, your big toe, and your heel. We should have evenly spaced pressure through all of those. A very big mistake that a lot of people make is in this rack position, they'll be sitting back. This happens when people lean back and don't stay upright, but a lot of their weight just drops onto their heels. And then conversely, going for the dip, a ton of lifters will lose the connection with their heel to the ground and they'll pop up on their toes. And then they just can't get their full lower body power into the lift. So really important that you spread your feet evenly. And if you're having troubles with this, work on your ankle flexion or widen your feet or point them out a little bit so we can spread our knees out and not fall forward with the weight. When you are doing this push press, hold all that tension. Make sure you're not dropping your head or upper body position. Keep your head up as you go to push all the way through, because what happens is when our head starts out of the way in the push and we're pushing straight up, if the head comes forward too early, our entire weight, our arms, the log, everything starts coming forward. And then we're going to have to work double time to make sure we course correct to bring that log up overhead. So if we're doing this dip and drive and we keep our head back the entire time until our arms lock out, we're maintaining that vertical line of force that's going to make the lift easier for you, right? Very, very hard to do in actuality, but just pay attention to your training videos, film yourself, and get that timing down so you're staying under the log and not behind it. Head through should be the last thing that you do in a press. Whatever happens, make sure that you bring your feet to an even stance so that you can complete the lift. And of course, wait for the down call and control down. There's going to be, there's 600 plus people at nationals. There will probably be dozens, if not hundreds of reps that will be called a no rep because people did not wait for the down call. This happens at every single competition. Don't let it be you, especially in an event where 1 to 2 reps can shake up a lot of placings, not just for the log press, but the entire thing. Now, the jerk and the viper are a lot more technically advanced. We've got other videos in Club Strongman that cover these in a little bit more detail, but I do just kind of want to touch on them briefly. All of these things are tools in your toolbox. If you were training a jerk, a lot of people have a lot of strength and they go into trying to jerk just because it's a valid technique. But we have to be really technically proficient and make sure that we are always finishing with the right foot position and the right posture. If we just go too heavy right away because we're used to push pressing 250 and we try to jerk 250, you're not going to be getting your feet in the position where you want them. So if this is something that you really would like to work on, have the patience to stay light and master the technique. Now on the Viper is a one motion from your lap all the way up into that extension. All of the fundamentals of the clean and the press still apply here, but we're just syncing them all together in one powerful go. When we're deciding what we want to do at nationals, you really should have an idea about 6 to 8 weeks out of what's going to be successful for you. Now, a lot of times people, to get a couple quick reps, they can typically Viper 1 to 2 to 3 pretty quickly out the gate, and then they'll go to push pressing the rest of the time. So you don't have to stay married to one technique or another. But if it's something that you can do, just again, think about it as tools in your toolbox and have the right attack and strategy plan. Most people will just be doing a typical push press the whole way through. Log is so individual dependent on programming, but what tends to work really well is to build up a good volume base in order to have a big high peak. When we're building volume and we're getting more reps and more in our training regimen, we also have the opportunity to practice our technique over and over and over again. So don't get caught up with the temptation to go for those really big numbers, because if you're not already very technically proficient, you might be reinforcing bad technical patterns that will do you no good in the long run. Other techniques we can use to build up to heavier weights are overloads. So this is, again, an overload is just giving your body more weight in certain positions. We can do this in our rack, right? Our front rack here. What you would do for that is set the bar up in blocks or in a literal, rack, a cage. Get under it. So all you have to do is stand up a couple of inches and hold in that front rack position and brace. Once again, we're just wanting to get our body used to feeling a lot of heavy weight. So let's say your competition weight is 225, but you've been practicing doing heavy rack holds with 300. When it's time to get back under that 225, it's going to feel a lot lighter. There's also a lot of physiological mechanisms that work there, but it's very important and it helps so much when you get under it and you can say to yourself, oh, wow, this feels a lot lighter than when I did that hold last week. We can also do this in a lockout position. So same thing, but we just raise it up where we get under with straight arms. And all we have to do is squat under it and lift up just a couple inches. So we're holding heavy weight in our arm locked out position. Same concept applies. As I said previously, know your technique about 6 to 8 weeks out and really sharpen it. Really sharpen it. Everything in strongman is pretty technical, but this is not the time to just totally wing some new technique. Let's lock in for nationals, go with what you can do and what you are good at and maximize it. Then maybe after competition, if you're thinking, wow, it would be awesome if I could do split jerks next time, then start implementing things like that. But don't try to just throw things around, to see what sticks. Log is something you can do twice a week with the right approach. With everything we do in strongman, we have to make sure that we are being mindful of fatigue. So if we're doing this lighter volume buildup programming style, then you can do a lot of work 2 times a week in log. Log is something that a lot of people have mobility issues with. Think about this guy. Let's go back, actually. This guy in his front rack. He's got a really good thoracic extension. I want you to picture like where the top of his rib cage would be and how good he is doing at rounding this upper body up and back to get under the log. If you're nowhere close to being able to do that, you need to work a lot of extension and rotation so you can be in the right positions to express your strength. Things that work really well for a log clean and press, especially since this is a 4 reps event, is using this increasing volume base building approach and then shortening your rests. Of course, as we're getting closer to competition, we want to start getting event specific, which is 60 seconds for reps. So if you were to do a couple sets of log with 3-minute rests about 8 weeks out, and then over the next couple of weeks get down to 2-minute rests, 60-second rests, eventually you're going to be able to do a lot of reps over and over and over again as you shorten your rest periods. You're training your body to get used to those 60-second rounds. Other things you can include in dip drills. Dip drills are holding the log in your front rack, dipping into the position where you're going to initiate your push press, and then just popping back up. As I said, one of the biggest problems or the biggest issues that a lot of people have in log is as they go to do this dip, their weight shifts forward, their heels lift up off the floor, and then when they go to drive, they're just eliminating a lot of power that they should be using from their legs and lower body. Complexes also work really well. This is just doing a couple of different techniques. You could combine a viper press into a push press into a strict press or mix those around. But I really, really want you to pick up that the technique of this is really important. So figure out the one that you need to use, figure out your weak points, and then just drill it, drill it, drill it. Cues we use on the log press. First, deadlift the log up. We already talked about that. Front double bicep in the rack position. We want to use our legs, hips, and lower body as much as possible to pop the weight off our chest. And then we want to punch the ceiling as we're going up. I really like that punch the ceiling cue because it's a really strong sense that we want to drive with power up, right? Now, something that a lot of people have problems with at bigger competitions is where they fix their head and their gaze on a log. A lot of coaches would cue you, and this isn't necessarily incorrect, to pick a spot on the ceiling and keep looking at it. The problem is when we get to bigger venues, something that's got a really, really high elevated roof, or in a lot of instances when competitions are outside, you're not going to be able to really identify a good spot to look at, especially if you're outdoors, you have nothing. But if the ceiling is 50 feet above you and you're used to a 15-foot ceiling, it's going to really throw off your senses. You'll get lost in that for a second. So, what I would recommend instead is to be in your body and think about your head, arm, chest, and your whole body positioning instead of just staring at a spot. Be in your body. This is something I learned from Nick Canby. Awesome cue. Love it. Works really, really well. In that rack position, log should be up in your throat because your chin is up and back. And then in the event itself, use the clock. This is a 60-second round. So depending on how good or strong you are, use that full thing. I've had an event in the past where 2 reps would have been a PR weight. It was a 245 max reps in 60 seconds event. I had done that same weight for 2 before, but I had a 60-second window. So I went in with a plan that I could probably do one about every 12 to 15 seconds. So instead of rushing out of the gate, I took my time and focused on one at a time. And I ended up getting 4, which was a gigantic success. So pace yourself. As always in rep events, we want to make sure that we're not just gassing out immediately out the gate. We want sustained performance through the entire window. So even if this is a weight that you're really strong at, how can you maximize that time frame? If I was somebody who could do 245 for 10, right? But then I have a 60-second window, I may try to do something like 3 really quick, short break, 3 really quick, short break, 3 really quick, short break, and then, see where I'm at for another 2 to 3. So I could push beyond by giving myself a little bit of a mini rest. Equipment on log, hard soled shoes once again. I really like lifters because it helps keep that heel connection we were talking about when you go to do that dip. Belts are great for bracing. I really like knee sleeves. I keep throwing wraps in there because some people use them, but I really discourage you from just playing around with wraps. There's a lot more that can go wrong by using wraps on game day. But again, just pointing it out because I don't encourage them. Elbow sleeves help a lot with getting that extension through the elbow. Wrist wraps. When we're wrapping our wrist, we want to make sure that we're strengthening the wrist, not just cuffing below it. We want to make sure that we can't really get a lot of movement around through that wrist. If we're just more so wrapping up on our forearm, we can get all of this action where you can roll your wrist all the way around. But to keep that nice straight line through your pressing arm, lock in, wrap up onto your hand, even onto the heel of your hand a little bit. As always, use your grip shirt for log. Helps a lot. Chalk up all over. All right, moving into the frame carry. So we have, like the yoke, we have our foot stance, very important. We're also going to talk about our grip, how you pick it up, and how you carry it. This image here is the frame for nationals right here. It's at a 16-inch pick height. There's a couple different ways that we can attack our grip and our foot stance depending on where your abilities are at. It is valid in different situations to have your grip completely centered, more forward towards the front, or more so towards the back. That combines with foot stance. We can have that staggered sprint stance like we talked about in yoke, or an even squat stance as well. Now I want you to look at this picture here. We've got Jerry Pritchett on the timber frame carry. And I want you to notice that these handles, actually the frame itself is tipping forward. So this is what would happen if you were to have your hands on the back of the handles. Now this could be advantageous because with this angle, the weight is actually going to pull you forward. It's going to give you a little bit of momentum. However, that requires a lot more grip and forearm strength. On the opposite side, if we had our hands forward on the handles, it would be the opposite of this image where the back of the frame would be near scraping the ground. This could also be valid because if you have a pretty weak upper back and you have a hard time standing tall and upright in a frame, it's actually going to pull you back a little bit and could potentially keep you in a good upright posture. The best grip typically, though, is just to have your hands centered, nice and even, so we're not moving around all over the place. And then we figure out what foot stance should we use. When we have this staggered stance, just like with the yoke, our goal is to stay even and centered with our weight and the weight of the frame, and then start standing up and take that first step right away so we can start moving immediately instead of in an even squat stance where we're just going to press up through our legs like a leg press and then start moving after we stand up. This, of course, all depends on how strong you are. If this is a weight that you're just having a hard time moving in general, you should not be playing with the staggered stance whatsoever. You should be doing this even stance and treat it like a really wide leg press to get it off the floor. Then find stability and balance, and then start moving. But these are all valid tools. You should try them out. If the frame carry is something that's a little lighter for you, you might do really well with your hands back just a little bit. It's really different person to person. It's also different frame to frame. So if you try a couple of these things in training and you're versed with them and well adapted, you might try out this frame at nationals and decide, wow, okay, you know what? I just got a couple runs with this and I've practiced having my hands to the back a couple times. I feel very comfortable doing it on this exact frame at nationals. However, do not just change your technique last minute just because. If you're making that decision later on, it should only be something that you've just trained over and over and over again. Like with the log press, I recommend figuring out and sharpening the technique that is best for you and sticking to that about 6 to 8 weeks out. With the frame carry, just like the yoke and other moving events, I think it works really, really well to alternate weeks. So you have heavy short weeks and then followed up by a light speed and maybe longer distance week. This is how we're going to get the best combination of strength, speed, stamina, and everything you want for a frame carry. When you do this, though, be 100% specific about your lengths. This is a 60-foot down and back course. There's no longer a turn for this event, but you'll be doing 60 feet down. The front implement must cross the line on the way down. Like with the yoke, I would really recommend be nice to your judge and ask them to tell you clearly and explicitly when that happens. You will turn your body around, pick it right back up, and then head back down where the entire implement has to cross the line on the way down. There are also slide penalties. So once again, be cool to your judge. Ask them to tell you without any doubt whatsoever that you have crossed the line. You're allowed 2 drops on this event. So also like the yoke, if you happen to drop it somewhere in the course, don't freak out. Take your time. Don't just go super slow, but don't get caught up in the heat of the moment to try and pick up really, really quickly. Make sure you get it right, pick it up, and get moving again. Now, of course, that drop, when you go that first end, you go 60 feet and drop at the end of the run, that does not count as one of your drops. If you're having a hard time with the weight itself, overloads are going to be a great friend. Every other week or so, get heavy weight in your hands, even if it's at a higher, more elevated pickup, and just hold on. Now, this frame carry, one of the important rules to know is that you are going to be, there are no straps for the frame carry. But if you just need to get used to holding heavy weight in your hands, occasionally it would be okay to use straps just so that your upper back and your arms and your legs are used to moving heavier weight. But you should not be regularly training the frame carry with straps. When you're doing this frame carry, always start with stability. You want fast feet. You want to get tall. You want to stay tight. You want to squeeze the handles Just like on yoke, hips are your headlights. Make sure you are sprinting through that finish line. There should be no question whatsoever if you're going to get close to the line or not. You should just be bull rushing straight through it. Also, like the yoke, this is going to have a lot more swinging back and forth than the yoke. So one way to avoid that is using that same type of approach where we want to find our top speed about 15-ish or so feet down the course and then maintain it the whole way through. So this should feel in many ways similar to the yoke. So we should use a lot of the same ideas, thoughts, and patterns to be successful at both. Like the yoke, hard sole shoes. Do not want that soft sole that's going to squish and absorb your power and force. Belts, this one I think does help a lot of people. If you have a problem with breathing, you may not want one, but it really just does help to keep that tall, upright posture and a secure brace head to toe. I really like knee sleeves for this one for just stability. Elbow sleeves, sometimes it's not going to help you out too much because this should be a straight arm event, but I just want to throw that in because personally, sometimes when I've had like a little bit of elbow issues and other types of movements, it just feels a little better on my elbows to include that in. So if you've got a bum elbow from the log press, just to keep it warm, maybe elbow sleeves would be a good idea, but they don't do anything for you whatsoever past that. Now, wrist wraps, this is a little bit of a gamble, but it's something for you to consider. Unlike the log where we talked about bringing it up, the wrist wrap up onto the heel of our hand, sometimes you can wrap your wrist right under the wrist on the forearm so tight that it forces your hand into a clamp. So if for some reason you have grip problems, you can squeeze your fist nice and tight, wrap that wrist wrap around, again, not on the heel of the hand, actually on the forearm, and it's going to help you keep that grip squeeze locked in place. It should be like almost painful how tight it is. This is not a technique I really recommend in general, but I just want you to always know there's all these different tools in our toolbox that we have at our disposal. So if you have problems gripping the weight, this might work out okay for you. Now, of course, always use chalk. Something I didn't say about this earlier with the other events, but in general, as an athlete, you should always come prepared with chalk, whether that's your own liquid chalk or having just chalk in your bag. You should always have some just in case you're not going to be able to use any at the show. You never know, unlikely, but it doesn't matter. You should stay prepared. Now, the frame deadlift is going to be a lot more simple. One thing to know from the get-go is that you are allowed to strap in before the time starts. When it's your turn, you should be ready to strap in and not waste people's time because there's 600 plus athletes at this thing, and they're not going to take kindly to if you're just taking all day long. So this needs to be something that you're practicing in your training is just how to strap in correctly. It's the exact same frame, 16-inch pick height. Unlike all of those options we have for the carry, this is so straightforward. We want centered grip and even midline stance. Our feet, the midline of our foot should be centered with the handles and our grip. One way you can gimmick this a little bit is to widen out your feet like a standing leg press. A lot of people are going to have narrower feet as if they would for a barbell deadlift, where they might have their butt up a little higher. But what we actually want to do, because of the positioning, our hands are out to the side, this automatically becomes more like a trap bar deadlift, where we're going to use a lot more legs. We can then, like I said, widen our feet out a little bit to do a standing leg press. Get tight, strap in, big chest, and press through your legs. When you're actually executing this, make sure that you're lowering under control for consistent reps. It's very easy after you lock out to lose control, let the frame drop, and then it can move all over the place, just a little bit forward, a little bit to the side, which every little inch counts as far as how we're putting power into a lift. So lower under control so you find that nice groove, and ideally we're just going in place, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. A lot of different ways to attack training for a frame deadlift. One of my personal favorites is to do deficit deadlifts. Of course, using a frame, or if you don't have a frame, use a trap bar. Since we have a 16-inch pick height for for the frame deadlift, just by training at 2 inches lower, let's say 14 inches, will force you when it's time to get to that 16-inch level to recruit more legs, and you'll have the ability to drive harder with more speed at that higher pick height. You should have squats of some sort in your program because this is such a leg dominant movement. CAT, compensatory acceleration training. This just simply states we want to use lighter weights with higher acceleration to generate more force and power. This is physics. F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. If all we do all the time is lift heavy weights, but lift them very slowly, we're only producing so much power and force. We can produce more force by dropping back to somewhere like 65 to 70, 75% and just violently executing this. This is training our body to produce this very high level of force, which will maintain and carry over then when it is time to get into heavier lifts. This isn't just something that works only at lighter weights. It's a general trained ability to move with force regardless of the weight. But once again, if you're only doing really, really, really heavy lifts, you're going to be slow. So why don't we just build up our force and speed and overall force production with lighter speed training? One thing that helps us out a lot is priming and potentiation before your deadlifts. This is just igniting the explosive spark through things like sandbag throws or jumps or different plyometrics so that our body is in this state of mind or state of being that's saying, okay, we're going to explode, we're going to lift fast, we're going to be powerful. Since we have sandbag throws, you could train them before your frame deadlift. Easy peasy. I really like linear progressions with frame deadlifts where we're just going to build up and up and up over time, getting closer to comp weight as we build out. We can once again use overloads, heavy holds, things like that. A contrast training method would be using a priming movement immediately before a deadlift. So we don't always want to do this, but we want some sort of potentiation before you do all of your deadlifts. So we would do, maybe 10 box jumps, 10 sets of one on a box jump, and then we just move over and start our deadlifts. Contrast would be immediately back to back where we do a box jump and then we walk over, immediately do our rep of our programmed weight for the day on deadlift. It's just another technique that's going to ignite our fast twitch fibers and get us to lift explosively. If you're crunched for time, you can do deadlifts and carries in the same set. It's a really good way to build volume and familiarity with the implement. I really think you need to treat this like a leg press and even possibly use a leg press in your training, because if we get our brace right, we get our upper back and upper body and core in the right position, all we got to do is press really hard through the floor. With cues, we already really covered a lot of this. We want to be really powerful. Like with everything else, let's use that tripod foot, big toe, pinky toe, and heel so that we're pushing evenly through the floor. Pistons, what does this mean? Pistons, it just means, up, down, up, down. We want to be like pistons in an engine, which we can do by lowering under control and always lowering into the same position so we can just pop right back up. Make sure you don't jump your down calls. There are down calls in this event. Don't mess up. Don't cost yourself. Every rep is really big points. Don't make simple errors. Just like on the log, use the clock. That's going to be very individual dependent, but use it to the best of your ability to maximize the entire time frame. Equipment, hard-soled shoes, or even barefoot for this. It's all about just generating as much force into the ground as possible. If you don't have any sole or any shoe whatsoever, you're going to be putting all of your power through the bottom of your feet into the surface that you are lifting on. You can go barefoot for this. You can go hard shoes. Figure out what works best for you. Now, I don't really want to get in too deeply to suits and briefs, but they are allowed. This is something that you shouldn't just wing it. If you're an experienced lifter and you have a suit, you should be using them in the last 4 to 6 weeks of your training as you're getting ready for nationals. Use your belt, use straps, figure eights, or the nines. You're not allowed to use metal hooks. They always say that. I've never seen them, but you can't use them. Same with the carry, knee wraps. Should not really be using those, but knee sleeves work well for stability and support. I like elbow sleeves if something's just feeling off with my elbows. And wrist wraps, if you want them, they're not going to do too much because you're going to be strapped in, but always tools in the toolbox and chalk up, even though you are using straps. This takes us into event number 5, the sandbag throw. Now, sandbag throw, one thing you need to understand is that it is a little bit of a hybrid hinge and swing with a squat to it. It's not a pure hinge like a kettlebell because that's our force moving forward and back, but we really want it to go up and back. So we'll cover that. And then at nationals, our bar heights are between 12, 14, and 16 feet, depending on the class. Technique for the sandbag throw, it's a hybrid hinge and a squat. Okay, so what we want to do is set it up as if we were doing a kettlebell swing where we're pushing our hips back. We want this bag really tight. The handle should stay tight the entire time as they're swinging around, but it should go right under the center of your body as you're getting under it. It shouldn't have any space. Shouldn't be a couple inches below you. It should be as close to your body and hips as possible. And then after we're in that hinge, we're going to start swinging our hips forward, but we also want to drive down through our knees like a squat combined at the same time so that we can start this throw up. Okay? Knee bend and jump into a violent high pull. Make sure when you're doing this that you finish with your hands and eyes where the bag should go. Okay, just think about that. Since we want to go up and back, we want our hands and eyes up and back, not perfectly vertically up, because we want to send this bag up and back. Very simple. If we release and our hands are up and forward, guess what? The bag's going to go up and forward. Now, when you're doing the throws, you have a 3-bag series at nationals. There's a couple different things that you can do that will change your score and your results. So if you're really good at sandbag throws, I would recommend trying to eliminate any sort of practice swings. You'll see when people do sandbag throws, they might do 1, 2, and then release on the third. If you can cut that out and save yourself seconds, do it. Another thing that people do to save time is to do a hop technique where they'll have the bag out in front, lifted up. They'll take a literal hop back to send their hips in as they bring the bag under them and then explode up as if you were going to do like a jump squat where you were sinking into the ground and popping right up. These are things that are really good to try in your training. Now, bags are going to be placed several feet out in front of you. So if you can, and you're strong enough, you need to practice this in your training, but you should be able to know how good you are at throwing. So if you get to that first one and it's light enough for you to chuck from that distance, just do it. Save time. Or the second one, or the third one even. But again, you should know this with your practice. Otherwise, run to the bag, grab the handles, walk back to the position you want to be quickly. Don't waste your time. And then begin your throw. Practice, practice, practice. Know how far you want to be out in front of the implement, and then apply it at training. Don't just guess the heights. Don't just guess this stuff. You should be measuring accurately so you know, yes, I can clear 12 feet from 10 feet away. Like with this other events, it's good to alternate heavy, light, and then competition runs. Make sure you're monitoring your fatigue for all of training. If you start to see that you're not able to throw these bags as high or as far, that may be a sign that you need to deload or just prioritize, more recovery. These work really well to prime for deadlifts and squats, like we talked about, and then priming within sandbag sets themselves. One technique I really like to do is to do a couple light throws, then some really heavy throws, and then drop back to the light throws. This is another overload technique where if we go light, heavy, light, by the time we get to that third round, it's the second round of light throws, in your brain and your body, you're going to be thinking, oh, this is so much lighter, especially with throws. If you work up to a 40-pound bag, even if you can't throw it very high at all, if you want to drop back to a 20, you're going to be able to absolutely rifle that thing, which will help you put out more power in every sandbag throw in the future. One really important thing on the sandbag throws is don't panic if you miss. What a lot of people mess up on is they rush these things. And this is a really demanding movement, even though it doesn't feel like a whole lot because they're light bags that you're throwing. You're just zapping your power every time that you do a throw. So you're more likely to see a successful throw after a miss if somebody takes a breath or two and then goes instead of rushes right into it. This happens over and over again. So take a breath, reset, and do it right. Don't just get caught up in the rush of the event because most people will. Now, as always, shoes. I've used lifters for this. I've even heard a lot of people say that they like basketball shoes because this is a moment where you want a little bit of a spring and explosive jump up as if you're trying to jump up and dunk a basketball or something. So worth trying out in training. Some people really like hard, flat shoes, but there's a lot of different options here. If you can't tell, I'm encouraging you to try out different things to understand what works best for you. You can wear belts. You can wear knee sleeves. I like knee sleeves just to give me that little extra pop in my knee extension. Elbow sleeves, I keep saying this because like sometimes when my elbows are bad, I still like having them for throws. And then finally, chalk really won't help that much, but depending on how the handle feels, should just be something that's at your disposal. So here's how I would program going into United States Strongman Nationals. First, we want to understand the 7 granddaddy laws of training. These are going to guide everything that we do for any competition or every pursuit ever. So let's just run through them. You really should know these and treat your training strategy for anything with an understanding of the 7 granddaddy laws. The law of individual differences states that everyone will have different adaptations to the same demand, right? People are built differently, so therefore there's going to be variances in strength, the ability to recover, coordination, mobility, age, stress level, and occupation. This just means there's no one size fits all regimen. Overcompensation states that our bodies react to stress by overcompensation so that it can handle more stress in the future. For example, the result of training is that our muscle fibers grow in size and strength. The overload principle is directly related to that. It just means that in order to improve strength, muscle growth, or endurance, you have to do more than you did previously. If you just use the same resistance over and over and over again, you will not be able to improve past your body's last adaptation. Linear progressions, just advancing, measuring things and making them harder is how we get this done. The said principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. This means that your body's going to adapt in specific ways to the demands that training places on it. If your goal is to be strong, you have to train for strength. If your goal is to become explosive, you have to train explosively. The use-disuse principle. It's just use it or lose it. With any movement pattern, it takes practice to maintain it, repeatedly greasing the groove over and over and over again. Once you stop performing the movement, your capacity to perform at the previous skill level begins to atrophy as time passes. The specificity principle states that in order to be good at something, you have to do it. If you want to be good at doing a frame deadlift, you have to do frame deadlifts. If you want to be good at sandbag throws, you have to do sandbag throws. If all you're doing is just a barbell overhead press and you want to be good at the log, it's only going to help you just a little bit. It's not going to be specific to what you need. Finally, the GAS principle, general adaptation syndrome. It's comprised of three stages: the alarm stage, the resistance stage, and the exhaustion stage. Alarm stage is a result of applying intense stress from training, which is the overload principle. The resistance stage is when our muscles adapt in order to resist stressful weights more efficiently. This is a combination of the overcompensation, the disuse principle, and the SAID principle. Finally, the exhaustion stage, where if we continue to apply stress, we will exhaust our reserves and be forced to stop training. So ultimately, the general adaptation syndrome means that we have to have periods of low intensity training or complete rest and recovery after strenuous high intensity training to give our bodies the time to recover and adapt to the level of training that was applied. So in your programming, following those 7 granddaddy laws, how can we apply those to acquire skill, have our bodies physically prepared for the demands of the competition, work across different techniques, attack our weaknesses, include deloads when we need our bodies to recover, train for the actual specific event itself, and then apply warm-ups and mobility to get the adaptations that we want. These are all the things that we're looking for that we have to balance and find the right blend for ourselves. This is just a sample split, right? I talked about how we could do 2 days of log presses. Hepburn method is just a building volume accumulation scheme. Of course, we want some sort of tricep extension, tricep strength, and shoulder stability for our presses, so we'll have to work those in. But maybe one day to balance these out, we do a little bit more upper back and a little more mobility, so we're not just hammering the same thing over and over and over again, which leads to exhaustion. Then on days 2 and 4, we could do something like sprints into our frame and trap deadlift. Then day 4, squats to complement the yoke with core and trunk stability. So this is just a little bit of an example of how you might cover all of those bases, right? Where we're getting a lot of technical practice, we're touching the implements themselves, but we're also building mobility, strength, conditioning, and the core strength necessary to do these things really well. Now, our training program can be perfect, but if we don't prepare the right way with our recovery and mental state, then it's no good. So when you're getting into any competition, follow a routine, especially those days leading up to the show. This is particularly true with your sleep patterns and your food. The night before competition is not the time to try the spicy Thai joint down the street. You need to make sure that you're using the foods, routines, and warm-ups that work best for you so that they can work best at competition. Weight cutting is a whole separate matter as far as water cuts go, but if you have 10 pounds to lose and you're 12 weeks out, you should be able to get pretty dang close to your weight within that. You shouldn't just be winging it or just thinking a water cut is going to save you. You need to have a plan going in so that you are at the desired body weight that you need to be at. Nutrition, you should have a good nutrition regimen, plain and simple. When you're competing, watch other competitors so you can learn from them and understand what they do to be successful or unsuccessful. Plan ahead, but be adaptable. You should visualize best case scenarios, but have a plan for if things go in a completely different direction. And we want to be adaptable. At the same time, we want to just be nice. It's very easy to get caught up in the jitters and anxiety of a competition, but if we're social, it'll help us be more relaxed. It'll help us harness our energy in the right direction to focus on what matters and not just get lost in all the negative what ifs that may never happen. You're also going to be more likely to get lucky breaks, have people help you out when you need it. So just be nice. Make sure you check your equipment. If you've got an elbow sleeve with a big giant hole in it, it's not really going to work out, is it? So just make sure that everything is in working order. If your shoes are ripping apart, maybe you need new shoes a couple weeks out. As an athlete, you should always be prioritizing your recovery. All the gains are made in your recovery. We all love to train, but we get the most out of our training by our nutrition and our recovery. That's where a lot of people separate themselves. This is where a lot of people with a ton of natural ability get beaten by people that just apply themselves in all of those daily disciplines. Visualize your performance and decrease stress. We want to be existing in a positive state of mind so that we can perform positively. And through that, combined with decreasing stress, we're allowing our body to recover and perform at the highest level. If all we're doing is just stressing out all the time, there are physical mechanisms in your body that literally decrease your strength, endurance, quality of sleep, focus, and so many other things. So it's in your best interest to make sure that you are decreasing stress as much as possible. And this isn't eliminating stress, because I think that's unrealistic to just tell people, hey, don't stress. We all have stresses. It happens. And you should understand that. So when you're thinking like, oh, I got to get rid of my stress, I got to get rid of my stress, I would instead suggest to think, I would like to manage my stress. Just that simple. You also need to manage your caffeine and stimulant use. These are boosts that aid in training, but they should not be the thing that gets you to train. Even more so, if you were to dial back caffeine leading into a competition and then you had it on game day, you're going to get a much bigger boost and bigger carryover for those performance enhancing effects than you would if you just are caffeined up all the time. As always, whether you're competing in strongman or not, you need to master your hydration. You just got to stay hydrated. Now, mentally, we did cover some of these, but your body always works mind, body, soul together. When you're competing, we want the best outcomes, and we can get those by regularly visualizing as specifically as possible the event, our technique, how we're going to perform. And when I say specifically, this means, how does the log feel in your front rack? How intense are you squeezing it? What's that yoke feel like on your back? What are you doing when you're running with the yoke or the frame? You need to create this mental movie in your head and see it successfully, so that when it's time to show up to nationals to do it, you should be comfortable as if you've already done it hundreds of times. So it's just time to do it successfully again. But there's a lot of crap going on in our lives. When I said decrease your stress, what we really want to do is just make sure we're bringing our energy to the right places at the right moments in time. We can do this through meditation and quiet practices. Even 5 minutes a day or 5 minutes 3 times a week of just silencing yourself, not looking at your phone, and having an intentional time where you just focus on your breathing will help you apply the right focus to your form and technique and execution in a competition when it matters. So train your concentration. Set the tone. This means charging up the experience. You can do this by having the right people around you, by listening to certain music. You want to get yourself in this aura, this field, this wave of success. So you can do that by mantras, incantations, positive self-talk, putting on that song that gets you in the right mood. You want these triggers and switches that will allow you to tap into the state that you need to be in when you have to go there. It can be very easy to get caught up in all the excitement and energy of a big competition like nationals. A lot of people just get overwhelmed by it. But if you have some go-tos, it could be a saying, it could be a couple words, it could be, something physical you do, like a self pat or something. If you have a switch or a trigger that ignites the right state of mind in you, use it. Apply it when you need to. A lot of this ultimately boils down to your belief systems and using the placebo effect. We've all heard about this. The placebo effect is just it's what happens when there's a scientific study and they give a rash cream to people and say, hey, this is going to heal your rash, but there's actually nothing in it whatsoever, but it heals the rash just simply because those participants of the study were told and believed that it was going to work. So when you are training, recovering, cooking your foods, doing all the work that you need to believe that what you are doing is setting you up for success because it will. And all of those things work harder and better just by believing it. This also means auditing certain beliefs that you may have about yourself. Do you think you can't do something because XYZ? You have to rewire that. We have to live and exist in a state of possibility, opportunity, and success in order to be a success. So really try to catch yourself. If something's happening in training or your life and you hear yourself say something negative or just have something that doesn't align with the goals that you have, recognize it, try to understand where that's coming from, and change it. If you don't understand where it's coming from, understand that it's not good for you and replace it with something that is good for you. I can't do this. I can do that. With all this stuff, like anything else, we have to practice, practice, practice. We can't just meditate one time and then be great at concentrating. We need to be practicing, practicing, practicing because we really care a lot about this stuff and we want to do well. You cannot just do anything one time and be good at it. You can't deadlift one time and then, deadlift 800 pounds. You can't meditate just one time and then be good at shifting your energy in any circumstance. So use these things to the best of your advantage and practice regularly. Now, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. We do have a 8-week peak program. It's available inside the Strongman Club. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in the comments below. But for the program that covers everything that we just talked about, plus technique tutorials and pro strongman seminars over all of these lifts, we have an Andrew Clayton, who is 3-time world's strongest man champion in the 105 kilo, covering the yoke. We have Nick Camby covering log and overhead presses. We have Gabe Pena talking about frame deadlifts and frame carries. We have all of this inside the Strongman Club, plus a community of other like-minded strength athletes to hold you accountable, bounce other ideas off of, and help you succeed to be your best. So for this program, to get support that you need in every step of the journey to be successful at nationals and beyond, we're currently running a 7-day free trial at clubstrongman.com. I'd hope to see you there, but if not, I would love to connect online. Follow me on YouTube here, hit subscribe, connect with me on Instagram. Stay strong. Thanks for watching and have a championship day.